initiated by the borrower, not by the lender. So the borrower should say that, okay, I have taken this money from you, or I am taking this money. Let me give you a receipt. Let me give you a document that you have given me this much money, and I'm going to return it back in this date, in this term, this and that. That's ideal, that the borrower should initiate it, so that the lender sometimes feel like if I ask for it, now he may think that I'm not trusting him and this and that. So it's ideal. But if the borrower did not initiate, did not say anything, then the lender should not shy away, should ask for it. Say, okay, I'm giving you this money, but let us document it and let us write it down. And when you document it, you also try your best to have witnesses. And if you cannot document yourself, you don't have the ability to write, get somebody else to document it. And if somebody else knows how to write, Allah says he should not say, I'm not going to write it. Why? Because Allah taught him writing. So that's very important, that Allah is the one who gave you that ability to write. Yes, that somebody else in the world of means taught you how to read and write, but Allah is the one originally, is the source. That's very important. Allah says that He is the one who taught you writing. So don't hesitate to use the writing. And that teaches us that every skill that we have, every knowledge that we have in any field, Allah is the one who has given us. Yes, college or book or teacher or other media, they are the means, they are not the source. The source of knowledge is always Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In any field, if we have knowledge, we should not stop to use it, because if what is needed, we should use it because of Allah. Allah knows that He has given us the knowledge. And also have witnesses to document, to witness the transaction. Why? Because a lot of times problems happen, disputes happen, people argue about money in so many ways. I know so many families that brothers, they do not talk to each other anymore. Sisters, they do not talk to each other. Families, they do not talk to each other. Why? Because of some financial transactions that have taken place in the household. Now they are completely separated from each other. But the Prophet ﷺ has prevented us from qat'i silay rahim, that you do not disconnect your ties with your relatives, with your immediate family members especially. And a lot of families, they do not talk to each other, Muslims, because of either inheritance or because of some other issues financial among them. Why? Because there is no proper documentation, usually. Most of the time, because of not proper documentation and because of not having witnesses. So that's very important, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the end of the verse, وَيُعَلِّمُكُمُ اللَّهُ, Allah is teaching you something that you should take it seriously. وَاللَّهُ بِكُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمٌ, and Allah is fully knowledgeable of what you do. Then the next verse says that وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ وَلَمْ تَجِدُوا كَاتِبًا فَرِهَانٌ مَقْبُودًا فَإِنْ أَمِنَ بَعْضُكُمْ بَعْضًا فَلْيُؤَدِّ الَّذِي اؤْتُمِنَ آمَنَتَهُ وَلْيَتَّقِ اللَّهَ رَبَّهُ وَلَا تَكْتُمُوا الشَّهَادَةَ وَمَنْ يَكْتُمْهَا فَإِنَّهُ آثِمٌ قَلْبُهُ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ عَلِيمٌ. Allah says that if now you are traveling and during travel you need to make a transaction, you need to take a loan or any other financial transactions, and you don't know people to call for a witness, you're not familiar with the area, with the environment, or the witnesses are not available, then what do? Then you transact your business based on a security, based on a trust, basically. You trust somebody that, okay, we cannot document it, we don't have the means of documentation or the means of a witness available. So basically, I trust you. And Allah says that in such occasions, when you trust each other, then you should fulfill your trust. You should fulfill your trust, and you should not, later deny it and also document it as soon as possible. When you are back at home and you have the means, then try to document and have the witnesses, and fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah is watching you, how much you are fulfilling the trust that has been given to you, and never conceal the evidence. Never conceal the evidence just because there is no witness. Say, oh, no, who was your witness? You didn't give me this money, you didn't do this, don't conceal the evidence. Why? Because Allah knows everything. Allah has full knowledge of what you do. SubhanAllah, imagine Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala 1400 years ago gave these kind of guidance for Muslims how to financially, establish justice basically, and basically the court system. The court system is all about what? About the bringing justice and bringing witnesses and bringing documentation, and the judge uses all of that. If there is no witness, if there is no documentation, judge cannot decide a lot of times, or judge may misdecide. So Allah has given us all the tools of establishing justice, and scientific basically write it down. The importance of documentation and not shying away from it is very important. So now, in the last 35 verses, Allah talked about different aspects of finances, different aspects of economic transactions. The last 4 verses concludes this surah. And it's very, very important. So at least one of them that we'll cover today, inshallah. لِلَّهِ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. To Allah belongs what is in the heavens and what is in the earth. Principle number 1. Principle number 2. وَإِن تُبْدُوا مَا فِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَوْ تُخْفُوهُ يُحَاسِبْكُمْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. Whatever you do, whether you do it openly, publicly, or you do it secretly and no one knows about it, you should know that Allah will take you into account. Any actions that you do, anything, any even thoughts that you have, any words that you say, any actions that you take, whether publicly or privately, Allah will take you into account in the Day of Judgment. يُحَاسِبْكُمْ بِهِ اللَّهُ. Allah will ask you about it in the Day of Judgment. Allah will put it in front of you and say, what did you do this? Why you did this? How? Allah will ask us about every little thing and big thing, whether we do it publicly or not. So that's very important principle that basically the whole surah has tried to bring to our attention, how to remember Allah, how to remember the accountability in front of Allah. The third principle, فَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah is the one that who eventually decides to forgive or not, or punish. So, Malik Yawmiddin, he is the master of the Day of Judgment, he is the only judge, he is the only king who will make decisions. Of course, decisions of Allah will not be arbitrary. Decisions of Allah will not be random. Oh, I'm going to forgive this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to punish this person or that person. It is all based on principles that Allah has explained to us. It's all going to be based on justice. It is all going to be based on an equal opportunity that Allah has given to everybody. So sometimes people make a conclusion that, okay, Allah said whoever that He wills, He will forgive, whoever that He wills, He will not. No, it is, yes, the decision is up to Allah, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, إِنَّهُ لَا يُخْلِفُ الْمِيعَادِ. Allah does not break His promises. If He has promised that there will be justice for everybody, and He has promised that there will be no injustice whatsoever, even at the, like a mithqal, like a tiny, tiny bit, we have to understand those principles, that Allah will forgive people based on that equal opportunity, based on that justice, And Allah will punish people based on that justice. So that's very important when we think about accountability. And then last one, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is able to do anything He wants. Allah's ability should not be questioned. Allah's power in our daily life, in this world and in the next world, should not be questioned. Because a lot of times it's hard for us to imagine like, oh, how could Allah bring back everybody back to life? And how could He does the justice to trillions and trillions of human beings? How could He take account of everyone? How could He do this? How could He have all these records? All of these things. Allah says He is able to do everything. And as Muslims, we know that. But sometimes we get these doubts. And it's very important to remind ourselves that Allah has the full capability because He has infinite power. We are always thinking in human terms, in limitations, finite power. Allah has infinite power. There is no limit for His power. There is no limit for His knowledge. There is no limit for any of His aspects and attributes. So that infinity concept makes a lot of things easier to understand for us. That when Allah says whatever He says, He will do it. And He has the ability, and He is doing it based on wisdom and hikmah. Subhanallah. These verses are so powerful, and then the next 3 verses are the most important verses of the surah that basically makes the final conclusions. Inshallah, in the next few days, we will listen and benefit to finish this wonderful, comprehensive surah of Baqarah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help all of us to further reflect on these verses. Ya Allah, help us to benefit from your book every day in better ways. Ya Allah, help each one of us to come to your book in more submissive ways and reflect on every verse and put those verses in our hearts and try to act upon it. Ya Allah, help us. Help us to share these teachings with others that we come across. Ya Allah, help us to improve our Islam and our practices every day. Help us to come closer and closer to you every day. And help us to help the others, other needy people especially, other people who are oppressed, especially our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Ya Allah, help us to help them. Help us to make continuous du'as for them. Help us not to feel complacent and not to feel indifferent about them. Ya Allah, help us to continue keep our feelings fresh for them, our sympathy fresh for them. Ya Allah, help us to think how we can help them all the time. Ya Allah, give us the ability, give us the sound judgment so we can help them. Ya Allah, accept our du'as for them and support them and protect them and help them to succeed against their enemies. Ya Allah, give them freedom and make us witnesses of their freedom. Ya Allah, accept our dua and the dua of all Muslims for people of Palestine and for all of us and all oppressed Muslims all over the world. Ameen ya Rabbul Alameen. Wa jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.